All right, ready when you are.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Beautifully done. You're getting better every week, brother. Better every week. Now we're going to have you sing the Star Spangled Banner next week.
Oh, that'll be interesting.
Something. Excuse me?
Yep. Yep. You got something, Jax?
My mom.
Is it about this Constitution and stuff? No, you can tell him later.
I wanted to ask if I can do the Pledge of Allegiance next week.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
Where'd you go?
All right.
Right there. It's in there.
So, let's see, a couple housekeeping things real quick. Wayne, I
My
know you're
question
here.
was
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead, Jax.
if I can do the Pledge of Allegiance next week.
Of course you can, every week. Stick around for the next year. All right, Wayne, I know you're disappointed, right? Buddy, I got busy.
Slacker.
Dude, I got busy today. Tuesdays fall apart on me, right? So apparently panic is setting in. I went to Sam's Club earlier today and there was a generator there that I've been looking at. It's one of those dual fuel. And they had like 12 of them a week ago. And today there was only one left. So I'm like, well, shit, I better buy it. I got that. So I was busy all day. I was busy falling into the panic. Wayne, I've got the flag by next week.
Is that
It's going
me?
to take up my entire wall behind me. So I will have it up, Wayne. I promise.
Yeah, you needed the generator to charge the battery to put the screws in the wall, didn't you?
Yeah, well, the lag bulk, 60 pound flag. All right. And let's see, do we have Stephanie Brooks? So Stephanie has sent me an email. Stephanie, I'm going to get back to you. I have not forgot about you.
I said you didn't have to mention my name. You could
Well, no,
just.
but I only said it was
answer
an
the-
email. You're narking yourself out. Just an email. I'll get back to you. And then if you would wait, everybody else, I know I have so many messages from y'all. A lot of you that are on here, I think I must have 30 messages right now. A lot of them are conspiracy theory that people sent me. I have not had time to get back to anybody. So give me a few days. I promise I'll get back to everybody. I promise.
I don't expect you to get back to me, Jim.
I will get back to everybody but Dan. I am not going to get back to Dan because Dan will get you in trouble with the law. So, all right. So moving on here, I was going to go over an overview real quick, just a summary of Article 1, but we kind of beat that half to death. Before we move on to Article 2, does anybody have anything on Article 1 right now that they want to bring up that we need to go over or that you didn't understand? Just real brief summary is Article 1 was talking about the legislative branch, right? So it's how we establish Congress. It is the authority that we give Congress, what they're allowed to do. If it's not in the Constitution, they're not allowed to do it. Does anybody have any questions about Article 1? Or should we just move on to Article 2? Anything? So you guys are all 10s now, Article 1. All right. Right on. Well, then I guess we'll move on to Article 2. And Article 2 establishes the executive branch of the Constitution. So by the executive branch, obviously we're talking about the President of the United States, President and the Vice President. I guess we'll just get straight into Clause 1 then. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1. Oh, Article 2. Sounds good saying that. No more Article 1. Finally. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1. The executive power shall be vested in a President of the United States of America. The President shall hold his office during the term of 4 years, and together with the Vice President chosen for the same term. Did I get all that right? Because I was just reading it out of Heritage and they split it all up.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, except, I guess, so I'm gonna read it one more time straight out of the Constitution. Heritage, what they do is Heritage will split up each section of each clause. So if I'm not paying attention, I start reading it, I think I got the whole thing. So the whole thing in, just so it flows a little better, the executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States of America. He shall hold his office during the term of 4 years and, together with the Vice President, chosen for the same term, be elected as follows. So, clause 1 is basically, it's establishing the president who is basically the chief executive officer. The Articles of Confederation, like everything else, with very few exceptions, was very weak in this. They gave Congress, the Continental Congress, the power of the executive. So Congress had the ability to pick the cabinet members. They had the ability to, what else? Cabinet members stuck out to me.
So Jim,
Yep.
I noticed that it says together with the vice president chosen for the same term, but it doesn't say together with the vice president elected from the same party.
No, but we'll get into that. That is coming. That's
Okay.
coming once we get into clause 3, I believe it is. So but we will get into that.
All right.
All right. If you see here, there is no mention in the first clause on term limits, right? All it says is that they 4 years. It is not a limit. And they used to be able to serve as many terms as they could get elected to, which kind of defeated the whole purpose of what we were trying to do here. Up until, God, I think it was 51, after Roosevelt was elected to 4 terms. And in 1951, we came up with the 22nd Amendment, which then limited the president to only 2 terms of 4 years max, with the exception being the vice president, obviously. If the vice president had to assume duty, they could do a max of 10 years. Questions? Discussion? Anybody? Dave, anything?
Yeah, I was just typing into the chat the old definition of executive. And the first definition of that in the dictionary is having the quality of executing or performing. Well, you can't use the word in its own definition. But 2, I think, is worth mentioning. The second definition of executive is active, not deliberative, not legislative, having the power to put in act the laws.
All right, so in 1825, they changed that a little bit because now we have a constitution. So in 1825, there's a couple definitions, but the second definition there is the officer, whether king, president, or other chief magistrate, who superintends the execution of the laws, the person who administers the government, executive power or authority in government. So it changed a little bit once we had a constitution. Does anybody have questions on this? Pretty self-explanatory, I think. All it's basically saying is that the executive power shall be vested in the president of the United States. Congress doesn't get the executive power. Judicial doesn't get the executive power, and we're not going to have a king. Moving on. Anybody? Anonymous user? Whatever. Government knows who you are. Oh, hey, Jeff. All right, so we'll move on to section 2. I'm sorry, section 1, clause 2. Each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors equal to the whole number of senators and representatives to which the state may be entitled in the Congress. But no senator or representative or person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States shall be appointed an elector. So now we're getting into the Electoral College. In Ohio, and I should know some of the other ones, I don't, but in Ohio, we have 18 electors. We got the 16 representatives and the 2 senators, for a total of 18, so we get 18 electors. We could probably do a whole day on just the Electoral College. I'm going to breeze through it. If you have questions that you want brought up, maybe, send them in an email, and we can do a separate, because I'm starting to get a few questions in. So maybe we could do a separate, in the middle of the week, another video, another meeting where we go over some of these questions. But I don't want to beat the Electoral College to death here, because it's too hard to understand for what we're just trying to do here. But in a nutshell, you guys realize you're not actually voting for the President of the United States, right? I mean, does everybody understand that? When you go and you vote for Donald Trump or you vote for Joe Biden, you're not voting for them. What you're basically doing is telling the state of Ohio,
But we want them.
well, right, you're telling the state of Ohio which candidate you want them to vote for and the electors to vote for, all right? So what happens is once the electors aren't set until after the election, and whoever wins the popular vote in each state, with 2 exceptions, that's the party that gets to choose their electors. So when Donald Trump wins Ohio, the Republican Party gets to choose the 18 electors that are going to go and vote for the President of the United States. Now, everybody but 2 states, it's Nebraska and Maine, is that right? Nebraska and Maine votes based on their popular vote in their state. Nebraska and Maine have it split up. I think, God, I don't even understand it all. I know they have congressional districts split up, and depending on, you can win an elector for each district, as opposed to just the ones that are issued for the state. And then I think you get 2 for winning the popular vote in the state. I don't know. Hopefully, does somebody else understand this? Because Nebraska and Maine confound me every 4 years. Nobody? Dave, do you understand?
I do not.
Okay, thanks. If somebody can mute Dave, he has obviously nothing to contribute to this. So we're going to go ahead and kick David out of the meeting. So anyway, most of the states, though, it's all popular vote. Now, there is a movement underway, and there have been over the years, to change the Electoral College, right? The Electoral College is there, though, so that Delaware doesn't get run roughshod over by California. It gives Delaware power in the election, so that we don't have all these states that don't matter. Obviously, after Donald Trump was elected and lost the popular vote, but won the Electoral College, there was a huge push to do away with the Electoral College. Now, there have already been states that have signed on to the National Popular Vote Compact. But for that to take effect, there has to be 270 votes. It's the same as the Electoral College. It's going to require 270 votes to go into effect. Now, does anybody see any problem with that?
Yes.
What is your problem with it?
Well, if you ever look at a map of how the country votes,
Mhm.
the only place that really is typically blue is the cities.
And the
And so
coast.
what that
Sure.
means, is that if we are voting for president by popular vote, they just have to worry about what the cities want, and they don't have to worry about what the rural and suburban areas want.
Sure.
And the other issue I have with that is if you want to hold an office based on popular vote, that's what the Senate and the representatives are for. But the president has to represent everybody, no matter which party and no matter what's going on, and they need to be
Absolutely
supported
fantastic points. That's not where I was going. I was holding
I
on
know
hoping you,
I
Alicia.
think I know where you were going.
Okay, hold on. But Alicia's absolutely right? So all the people that live in Los Angeles, California, have different concerns than farmers who are living in Iowa, right? And they have different concerns than folks that are living up in North Dakota on the Canadian border and folks that are living in New Mexico on the Mexican border. But when you allow just the urban dwellers to choose the president, which, and let's be realistic. I mean, they're mostly, the big cities are mainly Democratic. Actually, I think probably all Democratic, right? She's right. I mean, he's supposed to represent the entire United States. And this is exactly why the Electoral College is there, so that 4 cities in the United States don't get to speak for everybody. So
Right.
Robin, where do you think I'm going?
Because if we did not have an electoral college, pretty much New York and California would elect our president every year
Sure.
or every 4 years,
Sure. but,
100%, because of the population and because of,
That's not where I was going, but you're
Oh.
right. But where I was going, so let's think about the name of the popular vote. It's the National Popular Vote Compact, right? Do you remember back in Article 1 where states are not allowed to enter into compacts with each other,
yes.
right? So if we go back to Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3, and that is where it will,
Go, Jackson.
that's where it'll, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3. So if they try to get this thing passed right now, there is truly nothing saying, there's questions whether Congress could even approve it. Section 10, Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3 says, no state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger it will not admit delay. So the words in, while everything seems to be talking about war here, the words here says, or compact, enter any agreement or compact with another state. And I think that's where they're going to have a problem with this. So if it ever happens, and I don't even know where we're at now, somebody wants to Google that, as to how many votes. I know it's more than you think, where we're at with that National Popular Vote Compact. And what they're asking for then at that point is that it is just strictly a popular vote. That they're still going to have electors, but those electors have to vote by way of the popular vote for the United States. So, questions, discussion on that?
Yeah, I got a question.
Yep.
How do the states choose their electors? So for instance, Ohio has 18. Obviously, there's not 18 Republicans that were going to vote for Trump. So how do they choose who's going to be an elector?
What do you mean not 18 Republicans?
Well, you know, you have Sherrod Brown, right? He's a Democrat.
Well, it's not that. It's the party. So, and they can't be in office, right? They choose who they want to choose. But it's not, remember, it's whoever wins, the Republican Party wins, the Republican Party in Ohio gets to then choose their electors.
And they can just choose anybody? Like they can choose you?
Yeah, well, no, yeah, I think they can. I don't know what the actual qualifications as far as age or anything like that go. And I was trying to find it, man. It's just not as easy to find as you would think it is when you're panicking because you didn't prepare super well for Tuesday. I'm not talking about me. I mean, I am, but yeah, so it's the party. That's why they choose them after the election. So if Joe Biden would have won, the Democratic Party of Ohio would have got to pick their 18 electors. And remember, they can't have any part of government. They can't be holding any seats or being paid by the government. So
are we going to talk about faithless electors?
You can.
I mean, is that in here?
No, I don't believe it is. And it's not where I'm, not as far as the Constitution goes.
If I may, Jim, so I'm looking at the 2020 list of electors. I found it on Wikipedia, that reliable source. But for example, in, where was it? District 9, Steve Loomis, the president of the Cleveland Police Union, ended up being one of the electors. District 7, a former state senator who's no longer in it, ended
Who's
up being
that?
electors. Joey Paget.
I get to be an elector. I want to be an elector.
District 11 was a Summit County School Board member, right? So it's just different people from different areas, and looks like it's selected by district.
Gotcha. Cool. Thanks.
Right on. Jeff, do you want to talk about faithless electors? You obviously have something to say about this. I don't want you to sit there and be all pissed off all night.
No, not at all. But just they're under no obligation, but I think that there is some kind of penalty if they choose to cast their electoral vote for the opposite party.
That's
Because
it.
the electors, they're not under any obligation to actually cast their electoral vote for the party that chose them.
Correct.
Has it ever not been done, Jim?
Has whatever not been done? Where they've gone against?
The electors don't cast their vote the way.
I don't
the
believe it
people-
has.
When there'd be individual electors. So Ohio has 18, you'd have one of them that casts their vote for the other party, and that vote gets counted towards the other party's electoral votes. And
Right.
they call that a faithless elector.
I thought.
And
the
I
way-
know I do know that you're right. There is definitely a penalty for it, because I remember when this came up before and we were talking about it. Or not we, but the country was talking about it. And I just don't remember where that is, but it is not in the Constitution.
I thought the way that worked was if they voted if the electors voted how they were told to told to vote the first time, and it came out in a stalemate, then they can vote however they want, or something I remember something weird along those lines.
I thought it was different depending on what state, like each state has different rules for it.
Well, it is up to the states. However, every state right now, with the exception of those two, is popular vote for the state. It's not, no national popular vote. So it's popular vote for the state is how those electors are going to vote.
Yeah.
You know, my guess is though, I mean, Jeff's right. There's a chance there's going to be a faithless elector, but how often does that really happen? Because the Republican Party is going to pick who they want. They're not going to pick somebody that they're not sure how they're going to vote. You know what I mean? I don't know. When's the last time you remember it happening?
Well,
I thought there was some electors that went rogue out in Minnesota or out that way in the country.
Are you talking about with this last election?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it may have.
It's
Yeah.
Wikipedia again, but Google says 37 of the 306 Republican electors were faithless in the 2016 election.
Well, all right, there's your answer then.
I think when that happens, you can pretty much forget ever getting to be an elector for that party again.
I would guess.
You were
I would
asking,
guess. You know what, somebody, and interrupt, go ahead. Somebody, I'm gonna move on, but somebody look it up because I am interested in what the penalty is. So if you find the penalty for being a faithless elector, I would like to know what that is.
Pretty sure it's different per state.
How about
I
Ohio
think the
then?
states get to do it, yeah. You were asking about Maine and Nebraska.
You know, I was trying to find a lot of the
I found the Maine and Nebraska.
elector law, and it's not that easy.
You were correct about Maine and Nebraska though, Jim.
Yeah, that's a mess. I don't even understand
Split
it.
that up exactly the way you described, popular vote by district.
Oh, I'm just kidding. I totally understand it then.
Well, then, yeah, and whoever takes the popular vote of the state gets the 2 senators. And just to tell you how that works out, it's happened once in each state where they split the electors. 2008, Nebraska, 2016, Maine. Every other time, the whole state went for whatever party. So I think you might find something different, a lot different, like in Ohio, where you've got, complete congressional districts taking an entire city, which will go Democratic, and the rural areas will go Republican. So
I just posted a link in chat about the penalties. There's actually Ohio, there is no penalty. There's only a few states that have penalties.
Interesting.
what do they do? Take away their birthday?
I can take mine.
All right, so I'm going to move on to the third clause. Now, the third clause was changed by the 12th Amendment. And I think we'd be better served because the third clause is a long clause. I could read the third clause and then read the 12th Amendment, but it might be easier just to read the 12th Amendment right now at this point, because this is how this has taken over the third clause. And there's not a, well, it is a big difference. In the wording, there's not a whole lot of difference, but there is a huge difference in what was changed. And up until 1804, when we passed the 12th Amendment, the way the third clause worked, let me see here, which is the basically the Electoral College clause. So president and vice president were chosen before the 12th Amendment by whoever was first and second in the voting. So you could very well end up with, you know, at that time, a president from one party and a vice president from another party. You were taking just number 1 and 2, however they finished in the single electoral college vote. However, in 1800, Thomas Jefferson and his vice president, Aaron Burr, tied for first and second. So Congress, or the electors, it was tied. So it went to Congress, and Congress was actually looking at overturning the public's will on that. They were looking at putting Aaron Burr in as president instead of Thomas Jefferson. I think it went to some crazy, like 30 some votes before they finally decided to put Jefferson in there. But after that, because of that debacle, they then changed with the 12th Amendment that the electors now vote separately for president and for vice president, so that we know we will never have that problem again. Now, if you had a tie, or if nobody got up to the 270, then they're going to take the top 3 vote getters, and that would go to the House then, and they would choose who the president was or who the vice president was. Only the top 3. So if there's a 4th, and there was at one point, and I don't remember who it was, Henry Clay, I think, one of the elections. You know what, I didn't research enough. I know it was Henry Clay. Henry Clay finished 4th and got bounced off the ticket, or got bounced out of the rolls because he was 4th, and they only took the top 3. So that's the biggest change. The biggest change right now is that the president and the vice president are elected separately by the electors. And what the 12th Amendment says is, stick with me here. I know you guys are going to zone out on this. This is so long. All right. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president, and in distinct ballots the person voted for as vice president. And they shall make distinct lists of all persons voted for as president and all persons voted for as vice president, and the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify and transmit sealed to the seat of the government of the United States, directed to the president of the Senate, which is the vice president. The president of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives, open all of the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. The person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be the president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed. And no person have such majority, then from the persons having the highest numbers, not exceeding 3, on the list of those voted for as president, the House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president. But in choosing the president, the votes shall be taken by states. The representation from each state having 1 vote. A quorum for this purpose shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the states, and a majority of all the states shall be necessary to a choice. And if the House of Representatives shall not choose a president, whenever the right of choice shall devolve upon them before the 4th day of March next following, then the vice president shall act as president as in case of death or other constitutional disability of the president. The person having the greatest number of votes as president shall be the vice president, if such number by a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if no person have a majority, then from the 2 highest numbers on that list. The Senate shall choose the vice president. The quorum for the purpose shall consist of 2/3 of the whole number of senators, and a majority of the whole number shall be necessary to a choice. But no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to the vice president of the United States. Okay, so that's a lot to unpack, right? Does everybody pretty much understand how this works? Does anybody have zero clue what the hell I just said? Did anybody fall asleep at about the second sentence and just say, you know what, I'm gonna play Angry Birds until we're done with this? Holly, you fell asleep? Okay, anybody else?
I was
All
just wondering if you could repeat that.
Yeah, sure. The
No, I'm
electors shall meet in their respect. All right, so we can break it down real quick. So basically, they've got the electors meeting in their respective states. The reason they did this is they wanted to keep everybody separate. They didn't want everybody getting together where now it can be lobbied and, you know, Michigan wants a Democratic, they want to vote Democratic, Ohio's voting Republican. So now Michigan comes over and they're talking to Ohio and like, hey, what's it going to take? Why don't you come vote for us? They didn't want lobbyists getting it. They just wanted everybody separate. They wanted Ohio, who's going to vote Republican. They wanted them to stay in their state and cast their votes that way.
Do it for everything.
What's that?
Do that for everything.
Yeah, well, we have 50 independent countries then, which is where we might be going anyway. I digress. Moving on with that, they shall obviously, well, it's pretty self-explanatory. It says that one of whom at least shall not be the inhabitant of the same state with themselves, which means they can't have a vice president and a president both from Ohio, and then Ohio is going to move to elect them. They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president, and the distinct ballots of the person voted for as vice president shall make distinct lists. And the lists are, in case nobody hits 270, so we know the order that they voted, so that we can go back, pick the top 3, and we can send those over to the House. Where else? The president of the Senate shall, the presidents. Okay, obviously they go to the vice president, which was a big point of contention this time, right? Where in this Constitution does it give the vice president the power to overturn the state's electors? I mean, everybody wants to call, not everybody, but Donald Trump wants to call Mike Pence a traitor, right? There's other people in this country calling Mike Pence a traitor. Mike Pence was right. I mean, there's nowhere in the Constitution does it give Mike Pence the right to overturn the electors. It doesn't matter if he thinks it was fraudulent or not. I mean, that's not his place.
Well, you know, I was kind of thinking that. I mean, as vice president, that would make him president. Why would anybody want him to be able
Well,
to do
it
that?
would keep his party president,
Right.
right? But, you know, that's, you know, people's anger at this thing is misplaced, right? People that are angry at the federal government for the way the elections turned out is misplaced. There's nothing in here that gives, everything is left to the states. If you want to be mad and you think there's voter fraud going on in Pennsylvania, that's not the federal government's fault. That is Pennsylvania's fault. And we need to take that up with Pennsylvania, and we need to take it up with Michigan, and we need to take it up with Wisconsin. But to go and I don't want to get political, I don't want to get into all this, but to go and seize the Capitol because you're not happy with the way the election went, it's misplaced anger. I mean, those are people that don't understand the system.
But Jim,
there was actually people too that were like Republicans even that were saying that very same thing. I can't remember if it was Hollings or one of those guys during all that saying, hey, if you want to be mad, you know, go to your legislature about that. You know, go to your state leaders about that because they're the ones, you know, are having the issues. They're just an overseer, Congress.
That's what I was thinking, Jim. I mean, I don't think it's that they wanted to overturn the election and the way it turned out. Nobody's listening to all the filings that's gone on. I mean, we really, the system hasn't had its day in court. 'cause
Well, and
everybody's
we
throwing it
talked
out.
about this last week, and I'm not gonna get
And I'm
into it.
sorry I missed that.
No, that's okay. We talked about this last week, is none of us have access to the information and to the evidence that they have, right? They're claiming they have all this evidence. They've never shown anybody this evidence. The only people that have seen this evidence are the 60-some courts that have turned it down. So I have to believe that the evidence is not nearly as strong as they say it is, or one of those 60 courts would have taken it up. The Supreme Court, somebody would have taken it up. Renee? Oh, I am. I said I'm stopping. Right. Are you? Yes, I said I'm stopping right after
I
that.
said we're starting to politicize, so.
I know. I'm just telling you. Somebody mute Renee.
I apologize.
So no, it's all right. So moving on, not exceeding 3. So you see them once we get down to the vice president. If there is a tie, it goes to the Senate as opposed to the House. The Senate gets to choose them, and they only choose from the top 2. There has to be a quorum on each house of 2/3. So 2/3 of the representatives or 2/3 of the senators have to be there before they can do this. And then from there, it's just a simple majority. I think that's it. The only other thing that the 12th added that was not in the original Constitution is eligibility for vice president. That basically, if you are not constitutionally eligible to hold the office of president, you cannot hold the office of vice president. Any questions about that without talking more about what's going on right now?
Okay. So I'm confused, which should probably, oh, you don't need my video on. Oh, great, thanks. No, you don't need video on. Anyway, this whole thing I'm sorry. The whole vice president thing, we don't vote on a vice president. The president picks the vice president.
Correct.
So, like, this is irrelevant now then?
What do you mean?
Like,
suppose it comes down to Congress having to pick, they could certainly break the ticket up and end up selecting a certain president and a totally different vice president that he wasn't running with.
Say that again.
The way that's written, if it ends up going to Congress for them to decide, they can pick a president and then a vice president who that president was not necessarily running with as a running mate.
Never happened. It could.
Well, it could. Potentially they
Certainly could.
Yeah, we don't like that guy. We like this guy.
How would that ever come to fruition then? Because we decide who we want as our president or our person to run. And then once that person's decided, so like Biden was decided for his party, and then he ended up picking who he wanted as his running mate.
But it's
All it
only
would
if
take
nobody
is-
hits the threshold of the
Yeah.
majority.
Exactly. All it would take is 3 people, 3 different decently strong parties running for president, and nobody makes 270 in the electoral college.
So if it would have done it like at 269 and 269, then electoral college people, whoever, get to decide.
Nope. It would go to the legislature. It would go to Congress.
Oh, sweet Moses.
Yeah, at 269, 269, it goes to the House, right? But they are also voting on but that's for the president. So they are also voting, because we have 2 separate votes on the vice president now. So they are also voting on the vice president. So that would
Did you
only
just
be,
see my head explode?
oh, I know. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy when you start thinking all the what ifs. But the fact
I'm not
is-
even at the what ifs. I'm just trying to understand the basics to get to the what if part of it. I'm just like,
Well-
you read this and I'm like, but that's not the world we live in
Well,
right
it is
now.
what it is. I mean, it is what it says, right? I mean, so Bill's right. They could absolutely pick a vice president different than who is on the ticket. That's not typically how it's happening. But I mean, you got enough faithless electors in there that decide that they're going to go against the party, and they put a Democrat and a Republican in there in like one of those get along shirts. And, for 4 years, you got both of them wearing an extra large t-shirt trying to get along. I mean, I guess it could happen.
If you go back to, I mean, I think the closest electoral college we've had in recent years was, I think, 2004 with Bush. If a strong third party had come in and taken one state from either Al Gore or George Bush, this is would have happened.
Oh, sure.
So back to your faithless electorals or whoever,
Electors.
electors, thank you.
Yep.
Where do they all play a part? Like how, I
Well,
never
they-
even heard that word before.
They don't really, because there's very few of them. There's none, there's so far, there's never been enough that have made a difference. And those are just electors that go against their party, right? They go against who their party is going to vote for. So in this case, if we had all of our electors, 18 of our electors, we assume they're going to go for the popular vote for Ohio. And if they had voted for Joe Biden, they're a faithless elector at that point.
Well, I think
It's like
they
jumping ship.
they make a pledge and they say, if you choose me, I pledge to vote for this candidate. And then they're chosen and then they cast their vote. So if they go against their pledge, they're considered faithless.
Right.
And those are not anybody that is a senator or a representative or anything. Those are just random people that were put into that spot.
I don't think they're even allowed to have.
Correct.
Holding.
The Republican Party picked ours. It's all in who you know, I guess, really at that point.
Yeah.
All right. Renee's about to kill me. So here's what we can do. If you
I'm
guys
sorry.
want
No, that's
to-
fine. I just was
No,
trying
no,
to
no, no,
understand
that's
this.
fine. Listen, if you want to, we can have, I mean, we can talk about the electoral college. I'll do a whole thing on the electoral college. Let me know what you guys want to do. Send me an email or send me a message or whatever. If you
Sorry,
want to
I
do
wasn't trying to get the electoral college. I was just trying to understand how we got to the point where we were electing a different vice president than a president. So.
Well, that's
I
what it is.
apologize.
That is the electoral college. Yeah, it used to be, like I said, it used to be the top two, right? Whoever got the top two votes. So you very well at that point could end up with a Democrat and a Republican until they tied, until two people running on the same ticket tied. So, all right, so clause 4, we'll move on.
And I wasn't pushing you along. We were talking good stuff there.
No, I don't know. Sometimes I get this look from you and you're small, so I can't really see it, but I get this look and I'm like, oh. And
Just get your glasses out, Jim.
Bill's just, well, it's Bill. Bill's usually behind you and he's like, because he knows it's coming. He knows how to read you. So when Bill starts giving me I'm like, all right, I got to go. I'm done. All right, so clause 4. And I'm going to be honest, clause 4, I don't have, I hope David Davis is up to speed on clause 4 because everything I've tried to find on clause 4, there's not a whole lot of information out there about this. But we'll just read it. Article 2, section 1, clause 4, the Congress may determine the time of choosing the electors and the day on which they shall give their votes, which day shall be the same throughout the United States. So basically time and manner, Congress gets to pick on the electors. They're not telling you how you have to pick your electors, but all the electors have to be chosen by the same day. Let me see here where Congress may determine. So there's a whole lot of unresolved issues with this. The fact that it provides no criteria for deciding when an election fails to make a choice. I don't know what there may be statutes that cover all this, but by Constitution, if a state fails to make a choice, I don't know who gets to decide at that point for them. Or I don't know. I don't know. And everything I tried to find on it, even the Heritage, I mean, this is the Bible of the Constitution. They're pretty confused on the whole thing. This thing, they only gave me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs, and all the paragraphs are talking about things that they didn't cover in this. So I guess you just take it at face value right now, unless somebody else has something to add to it, that Congress gets to determine the time and place, time and manner, but they don't get to decide, not manner, I'm sorry, the time and place. The states still get to decide the manner. But Congress can tell you when you have to have all your votes in. I don't know. Dave, anything on that, please? Help me, God.
Yeah, I find that a little unusual, especially because if everybody remembers, we talked about Congress having the power to compel people to appear and to compel people to vote. And so that what was happening with the King of England couldn't happen here. And it's unusual that this has no requirements listed, no time schedule, no nothing. It doesn't seem to have any enforceable timeline,
Yeah, there's no teeth at all to this clause.
Right, so it does stand out starkly from the other things we've read where they're trying to make sure that timely action is forced. It's unusual in that respect.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, but now you've read it, so you can say you've at least heard it. Move on to clause 5, which is the eligibility clause for the president. No person except a natural born citizen or a citizen of the United States at the time of the adoption of this Constitution shall be eligible to the office of president. Neither shall any person be eligible to that office who shall not have attained to the age of 35 years and been 14 years a resident within the United States. All right, so this is obviously listing the three main requirements for eligibility. Natural born citizen, which Joseph Story, who I refer back to quite a bit on the commentaries of the Constitution, had an interesting quote here, which is the character and talents of a man in the middle age of life at 35, middle age of life are fully developed, and he has had the opportunity for public service and for experience in the public councils. So wives, take note of that your men in your lives, your husbands, their character and talents are fully developed by the time they are 35 years old. So just Joseph Story was a smart man.
I agree. I agree 100%.
Yeah, right. Me too. So I'm 50 now, so I'm well versed in the world. It's just funny to me that Joseph Story would, I mean, we all know people at 35 years old that are not well versed in anything, right? But so that's it. The natural born citizen thing has come up lately too. It always comes up, but lately, as to whether being born out of the country constitutes being a natural born citizen, right? If your parents are both in the military, or your parents, your dad's in the military, and you're living over in Italy, and you're born in Italy, are you a natural born citizen? Natural born citizen to the United States? And the answer to that is yes. I think it was 2008. Yeah, 2008. The United States Senate unanimously approved a resolution that John McCain, who was born outside of the country to American parents, was in fact a citizen. And I would agree with that. It comes up when you have candidates that, well, anymore, we're so polarized now. Any candidate that wasn't born in the country, it's going to come up. I don't know if the Supreme Court's ever ruled on it, but generally it is accepted that as long as you were born to American parents, you are an American. You've got to be 35 years old. And that's where Joseph Story's quote comes in that I think is so great, that at 35, you are a man of the world. And that is the oldest, if you remember. And I think it's 25, right? 25 years old for House of Representatives. It is 30 years old to be a senator, and you got to be 35 to be president. So, and the last one is that you have to be a resident of the United States for 14 years. Where did I?
Can we add age maximum to that, please?
Yeah, no kidding, right? I mean, you can't be a policeman if you're over, I don't remember what we are now. It might be 35. Yeah, there's age requirements for everything else, but you can be 80 some years old and be president of the United States.
That wouldn't fly today because of age discrimination.
What's that?
That wouldn't fly today because of age discrimination.
Well, you know what? That's half true. I mean, we can get away with it. The police department can get away with it because obviously the duties of being a policeman, we don't want a bunch of old folks in there running around.
They have age requirements for the military too.
Yeah, they do. You don't want a bunch of 70-year-old guys getting sworn in to go fight for us. I mean, I know a few 70-year-old guys that can go fight for us, but
I'm sure those 7-year-old guys, they're probably tougher than some of these kids today.
No, for sure, for sure. I had something else here, and I thought I had it written down.
That there's no age requirement for the Supreme Court.
No, I don't think there is. There's definitely not once you're in. It's a lifetime.
No, I mean, there's no.
So Joseph Story also, when we're talking about natural born citizens, one of the quotes he had was that being a natural born citizen cuts off all ambitions, foreigners who might otherwise be intriguing for the office. So his worry, and their worry at the time, was that you're going to end up with people whose best interests are not that of the United States, right? So just to avoid politicizing anything, we'll go back to the time this was, you have somebody who's loyal to the king in England, and he decides, you know what, I'm going to go over there, move over to the United States, and I'm gonna run for president. And now you have a loyalist who is president of the United States. And being a natural born citizen, or at least there at the time of the Constitution, prevents that, right? So right now we can't have somebody coming from a country that is less than kind to the United States and try to become the president. Now, obviously, governor you can. Different states have different rules for their governor. Like you got Arnold Schwarzenegger, who's a governor. That was one thing. Arnold Schwarzenegger could never become president. So
I have a question
just thought
about
that.
that.
What's that?
I have a question. So say if who's the royal family, Meghan and Harry, okay? Say they come to the United States and they apply to become citizens. They become citizens of the United States.
Megan's a citizen. Harry's not.
Okay, they have a child, okay, who is now a American citizen. Can that child, who has obvious ties to the monarchy in England, can that child run for office or for president?
I believe they
Damn, Chris Swain.
titles.
What's it?
I believe they could if they don't have any official titles given to them by the crown.
Right, but it's still kind of a conflict of interest, no?
Well, I don't know if it is it. I mean, they're not.
Maybe,
no
maybe
emoluments.
not.
There's no. They're
At
not
this
being
point,
given
maybe.
anything by that country. They're not being given a title. They're not. I don't know. No, I mean, I wouldn't think so. And did Meghan renounce her American citizenship?
Yeah, that's what I was going to tell you. Yeah, she announced her citizenship.
I thought she did.
Did.
But
She's
Jim,
not.
Jim, don't they, no matter who it is, if a military person has a baby in England, doesn't the child claim both citizenships until they're 18? And then at that point, they have to declare where they want to be a citizen of? Am I wrong on that thought?
I don't know, Brad. What happens with that? Because they're actually born on under what's the word I'm looking
No,
for?
you can be dual citizen.
Yeah, but
Yeah, but
it's
it-
born,
yeah, but it
born
reaches an
on
age.
a U.S. military installation, because that's sovereign land right there.
No, I think if you're born on, aren't you
That's
just a
only-
citizen of
That's only if
the
your
United
mother
States?
if your mother has the citizenship of certain
Correct.
countries.
Yeah, and if both parents are U.S. citizens, they're a natural born U.S. citizen as is. Now, there may be something to do with each state. I mean, each country has their own citizenship laws. So if you're a country and you say you're born in the U.S. is kind of unique in that, if I remember correctly, like to be born in America and get automatic citizenship is not normal in the rest of the world. So if we
Anchor
make
babies.
some of our
Yeah, it's not normal anywhere. I mean,
yeah,
believe
they
me.
projecting some of our own stuff
All
on
right.
the world. That's not necessarily how it goes.
All right, I'm going to move on here because I've got right now 5 minutes, and I think I can probably get through Article 2, Section 1. I think we can jump right into Section 2 next week. So we're going to move on to Clause 6. Clause 6 is the succession clause. And what that says is, in case of the removal of the president from office or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of the said office, the same shall devolve on the vice president. And the Congress may, by law, provide for the case of removal, death, resignation, or inability, both of the president and vice president, declaring what officer shall then act as president, and such officer shall act accordingly until the disability be removed or a president be elected. Why do I feel like I missed an amendment here?
The 25th Amendment supersedes.
No.
Nope.
Yes, you did.
No, it did not.
Regarding that.
That was changed by the 25th Amendment, I believe.
Is that succession? All right.
Yeah.
You know
So-
what? That's weird to me that I don't have that written down. Why don't I have that written down?
two things on this, right? So Woodrow Wilson had a stroke in the White House, and his wife basically ran the country for the last year or two of his presidency.
Right.
That was kind of one of the big things that pushed the need for the 25th Amendment to get that set in stone and have the ability to remove from office.
Right.
Right, so the 25th Amendment specifically states that the vice president shall become the president.
Correct. The terms.
And the problem
So-
with Wilson is that he didn't die. So there was no secession. They didn't have a way to remove him yet
Right.
in law.
So Brad, are you, Woodrow Wilson's wife was the first woman president?
She pretty much was. She ran this shit.
Sorry.
All right. So it's, and I didn't read them both. Obviously the 25th, I knew there was another one, and it's the 20th. So this one goes side by side with the 20th and 25th Amendments, with which both, this clause is the anchor, but both of them expand on that. So right now, currently what we have is, if something happens to the president, the vice president becomes the president. Now, the way that this is written here, and this is why it was changed, is that if you look at it, it says that in such, let's see, where are we? Death, resignation, ability, both the president and vice president declaring what officer shall then be act as president. So what they were doing was Congress could pick whoever they wanted in the cabinet, whatever, to become president, and they weren't elected officials. So we changed that, and now it goes to the Speaker of the House, right? So if the vice president and the president are both incapacitated, both killed, whatever, Speaker of the House will pick up the presidency. If vice president, the Speaker of the House are all killed in a plane crash, the president pro tempore of the Senate, which is the person who, if you remember, that the Senate has chosen to be in charge when the vice president is not there, that person will then become the president of the United States. All right. Now, you guys remember the show Designated Survivor, right? So everybody is in the Capitol building, bombs go off, Capitol collapses, everybody's dead, and they have that one. Then we get into the cabinet members, right? That's where we can then go into cabinet members and we can pick one. Designated Survivor. The whole point of the whole show was that they had some low-level Department of HUD, nobody knew him, cabinet member, and they would put him over somewhere else in some closet somewhere away from everybody else in case something happened to everybody else. So if you haven't seen the show, it's actually a pretty cool show. So while he's watching this address that's going on, and they're all there in the Capitol explodes. So now this low-level, nothing cabinet member who had no real power in the government, people are coming in there and they're like, Mr. President, you need to come with us. He's like, wait, what? And that's what the whole show is about. It's about him bringing the country back. It's actually a pretty good show. It's called Designated Survivor if you haven't seen it.
Kiefer Sutherland was the big name.
Yeah, that was a good show, man. All right, so moving on. Clause 6 just establishes succession. Clause 7, the president shall at stated times receive for his service a compensation which shall neither be increased nor diminished during the period for which he shall have been elected, and he shall not receive within that period any other emolument from the United States or any of them. So
Can't we add Congress to this one too?
I wish. So what this is compensation, right? And what we're doing here, if you see, it says that it will not either increase nor diminish during the period of time for which he shall have been elected. And the purpose for that, which is great, and I wish it was for Congress, is it basically stops Congress from punishing or rewarding a president, right? It's stopping the Congress from having any undue influence on the president. Hey, you want to raise? You know? And it's also going for the same for the states. The states can't, no emoluments from the states. They can't give the president anything while he's in office. It's just keeping everything separate and keeping everything above board. Questions on that? All right. And finally, Section 8 is the oath. Before he enters on the execution, I'm sorry, not Section 8, Article 2, Section 1, Clause 8, before he enter on the execution of his office, he shall take the following oath or affirmation. I do solemnly swear or affirm faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Anybody notice anything missing from there? That's said almost every time?
So help me God.
So help me God. So help me God. It's not in the oath, but the great majority, maybe all, I don't know, of the presidents have sworn on the Bible that George Washington kissed and have sworn this oath, so help them God. But it's not in there. It's not required. And the other thing is there's discussion as to the preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and what authority that gives the president. I've got a couple minutes, so or a couple over, but discussion on that. Anybody? David? I feel like you got something.
Amen and a women.
Oh, stop it. Here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go. You know,
There we go.
Perfect.
That's awesome.
you know what,
That-
Brad?
That's for the discussion, Brad.
I expected that from others here. I expected Mike to say that.
Mic drop.
Maybe even Becky. I would expect Becky, maybe. Jeff, probably not. Holly Swink would do it just to get a rise out of people.
I would have if I thought of it, Jim.
Oh, Dan, Dan for sure. But seriously, so any discussion at all on this?
I actually think when we were talking about the 25th Amendment, it was a good segue. Pence did announce tonight he's not invoking the 25th.
Mike can't, right? I mean, well, we're getting.
Yeah, by definition, I don't think he can, because the way I read that is like if they're sick or they're going under was it anesthesia or something like that. Like that's how I read the 25th.
And that's what it is.
Too.
Your inability to
cognitively.
Yeah, I mean, just because you don't agree with something somebody says is not going to invoke the 25th.
Yeah, can just anybody say, hey, the guy's nuts, we need to get him out of office? Don't you have to have a doctor declare that?
Well, I would guess if you're going into it for mental health reasons, you would certainly have to have something, right? You can't have Chuck Schumer decide that President Trump is nuts.
They wish they could.
No, they do wish they could. Oh, stop it. We're getting political. Renee,
Okay.
I'm so sorry. It's
Jim,
Dan.
did you see?
You know what Dan does? He says this stuff and then he mutes himself real quick so nobody can mute him.
Did you see Dan Griffin's question he wrote on there about
I did
when did
not.
it come about that the president picks the vice president he runs with? I'm interested in that.
When did this?
When
I
did it
don't
come
know.
about?
Dan asked, I don't know if anybody knows if David is still here. When
Yeah,
did-
that's a good question. I saw that question and I don't know the answer. That's a very good question.
I'll find out for you. I will find out for you, Dan.
Yeah, you don't have enough to do you?
Whatever. Doesn't matter at this point. It's a wreck.
Yeah, I thought it came when that the amendment was passed to make it where it's not 1 and 2.
It's entirely possible.
Well, no, because that was in the election of 1800 and Aaron Burr was Thomas Jefferson's vice president. He was his running mate.
Yeah.
So, and that's what caused the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'll look into that. All right. So anyway, there's Article 2, Section 1. Does anybody have questions on that? So we got through the first section of,
In the late 60s, it became the practice of the principal candidate in the presidential elections to announce his or her preferred choice of running mate at his or her political party's national convention.
Do you know how it was done before that? Because I was only like 14 years old in the 60s. So how were they picked before that?
see, Renee, see what you've done?
I know. I know.
Can of worms.
When did the position of Vice President of the United States stop going to the runner-up?
While Renee's looking for that, listen, I have two things highlighted here I forgot about on the oath. So what it says, presidents have traditionally sworn the oath on a Bible and have ended with "so help me God," though the Constitution requires none of these gestures. A suit requesting a court order to prohibit the Chief Justice from prompting the "so help me God" phrase was dismissed for lack of standing in 2010. in 1842, Joseph Story, and you got to remember, I mean, these were a religious bunch back then. They did not fall away from the Bible and from religion like we have now. Joseph Story said, "A president who shall dare to violate the obligations of his solemn oath or affirmation of office may escape human censure, may even receive applause from the giddy multitude, but he will be compelled to learn that there is a watchful providence that cannot be deceived, and a righteous being, the searcher of all hearts, who will render unto all men according to their deserts. Considerations of this sort will necessarily make a conscientious man more scrupulous of the discharge of his duty, and will even make a man of looser principles pause when he is about to enter upon a deliberate violation of his official oath." So they put a lot of stock, even though it doesn't say anywhere in there did it say, "So help me God." There was an understanding that oath, that you were speaking to God himself. So
I wonder how much debate there was about that, though. I mean, obviously, if they didn't put it in there, there must have been some disagreements about putting it in there.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Separation of church and state, would that have fallen under that? To not
Well,
put it in there, but
there is no separation of church and state. I mean, the First Amendment is guaranteeing you that the government can't come in here and tell you how you're going to pray or what religion you have to pray to or establish a national religion, right? But nowhere in the Constitution does it say separation of church and state. Nowhere. The only time those words came up, and I think it was from Thomas Jefferson, I believe, is a personal letter that he wrote to somebody or to a group talking about a separation of church and state. So, I mean, there's nothing in the Constitution that says there has to be a separation of church and state. It says that they cannot.
And I think when that came up, it wasn't that the church could affect the government. It was that the government couldn't affect
Could
church.
not affect the church.
Correct, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
right, but
anytime there is a prayer before, like when the Senate meets or the House meets, some of you would be objecting to it.
Council, we say a prayer before council meetings.
But
Yep.
including "So help me God" in the oath would have been including that there. But if it's just accepted practice, then that kind of like if somebody for whatever reason doesn't want to
Well,
say,
and
"So help
yeah,
me
you know
God."
what? There's something to that, I guess, because if you look through the Constitution, how many times you see the word God in it? And they were a God-fearing bunch, man. They were. Declaration, I believe, references God maybe once.
Does
but
it
they're-
have, does it possibly have anything to do with, like I became a notary back in 2000 or so, and the reason behind having the affirm part is for those people who have to swear that don't believe in a God.
Maybe, because in the Constitution it says or affirm, but I don't know, I don't know. Back then, how many people didn't believe in God? I mean, I'm asking, I don't know. Was that a thing then? Were there people?
Oh, I'm sure there were.
But which God?
They would have gotten stoned to death.
Okay, check the Salem witch trials.
Right, and the Book of Mormon was that started. I mean, that obviously is believing in God, but it's very different beliefs than God.
Still God though, right? I mean, it's still
Well, and it's just like
It's
the
God,
Masons.
but they believe in like a
The Masons
God being
say
there.
you have to believe
Right.
in a God,
Mhm.
whatever that God is.
Renee, are you still reading, trying to find the answer to that? All right,
I
listen.
appreciate that, Renee.
Listen, I am going to, we're already well over. We're at 9:10 right now. So I guess we'll just go ahead and end this. I will try to find the answer for that. I've got some other questions that have come in. Maybe, I don't know, middle of the week or so.
Prior to like Kennedy's time, the vice presidential candidate was picked by the party. So I found an example. Herbert Hoover, president from 29 to 33, he protested vociferously, but to no avail, against the Republican Party's choice as his running mate, the Senate Majority Leader Charles Curtis. The two were barely on speaking terms for much of his presidency.
So the party picked the vice president?
Yeah, prior to the 60s, the party picked. They did run as a pair, but
Right.
the president, the guy running as president didn't get to pick his own VP.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for that.
But
For those that want to stay here longer, Jim, it's only 7:11 here in Tucson, so go on my time. You got a couple hours.
I think Jim froze with a classic face.
Yeah, that's a great still shot. That should be his Zoom picture.
Jim went to get his bourbon.
There you go. Sorry, I broke off. What happened there, Renee?
You have a perfect picture of
Who
it.
had the funniest picture that you
I don't know
wrote?
where it went. Yeah,
It was
sorry.
perfect. It was perfect.
All right. Anyway, let's move along. We'll end this for now. I've got a couple questions to answer. Dan, I'll add yours to the questions, and then maybe on a Wednesday or so, we'll just 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. We can all just get together real quick. If you want to be here, be here. If you don't. We'll record it, and we'll go over some of the questions.
That's tomorrow, Wednesday.
Not Wednesday. Not Wednesday. I have to work. You're right. Maybe Friday night. Nobody has to work in the morning. We'll do Friday. I'll figure it out. All right. So let's just end this, Renee. And then what are we doing? Are we going to end this and stay here? What do we choose to do?
Jim, Gwen can't get on for nothing. She can't get her volume to work.
Did she come to this new link?
Yeah, and
She was here and then she left.
she said because she couldn't hear, she's tried everything.
Did she see my chat?
I don't think so. I mean, I was at Stephanie's and we were letting her listen through my phone, just listen in, but
What was
really
your
went-
chance? No.
I was gonna give her the phone number to call in for her phone, but I guess she didn't see my
if
chat.
you have it, send it to me and I'll Facebook it to her.
Yeah, we'll post it probably with the link.
Well, what are we doing? What are we doing here, Renee? Are we going to
That's what I'm
Stay
talking
here
about. Like
for the
she want-
after?
So
Or are we going to have a different link?
So Brad had suggested that, if we remember from last week, that it's nice to kind of break it so that we're fresh.
So
I-
end this and we'll put up a new link on the page for the after,
For the after.
for
And
anybody who wants to go.
As we wine with the wine, we'll go drinking with Larkin.
Wish my name was Lincoln.
Right?
Drinking with Lincoln.
Dang it.
First, you gotta go get some.
Hey, Renee, don't forget to put it on the Constitution's page.
Yeah, not your page, because all your friends
Yeah.
are like, what?
I did that one time. One time.
Seems
it
like it's
takes.
every time to me now.
All it takes.
All right.